equality, and inclusion. Our value in the world is immense, and this commitment that we make as NASA helps us to succeed as an agency for the benefit of all humanity all over the world. The theme of this year's agency event is Power of Active Allyship, and that means working together to fight injustice and to promote equity in the workplace. Thank you for tuning into this important event where members of this community and our allies will discuss the issues and opportunities we face as a united NASA family. I encourage each of our family to reflect on ways that we can support our LGBTQ+ colleagues and friends. It's the NASA family that continues to make this agency one of the best places to work. And our success as a team relies on our diversity and our continual support and respect for one another. Thank you.
Welcome to today's LGBTQ Pride Month panel discussion. Thank you for joining us on NASA TV. I want to thank our leaders of our LGBTQ employee resource groups from across the agency who came together to organize this session today for you. I also want to thank our administrator for a wonderful introduction to kick things off today. We really appreciate that. And thank you to our panel members. We'll have a chance in just a moment to go around and make some introductions. Let me tell you that the theme of today's event is the power of active allyship. And I think that's a great topic for Pride Month. Pride Month is a couple of different things kind of that go together. It is a celebration of who we are as a community. It's also an acknowledgement of some of the struggles over the years in the quest for equality. And it's also an acknowledgement of some of the challenges that still remain. That's where allyship becomes very important, both within and to the community, because there are things that we can all do to work together to achieve those goals of equity and inclusion that we're all interested in. So let's introduce ourselves this afternoon so we can kick off the discussion. I will start. I'm the moderator for today. My name is Charles Cockrell. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I am currently the Associate Center Director for Strategy at NASA Glenn Research Center, even though my permanent home, if you will, is at NASA Langley, where I've spent most of my career, and I am one of the executive sponsors of our LGBTQ employee resource group there at Langley. And I'm very proud to play that role because I also identify as part of the LGBTQ community. So again, thank you. And now let's go around and introduce our panel. I will ask Melanie to start this afternoon.
My name is Melanie Saunders. I'm the Deputy Associate Administrator for the agency, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I've been an ally for a number of years. I spent most of my career at the Johnson Space Center, and in my last few years at JSC, I was the chair of the Inclusion and Innovation Council, which was JSC's DEI panel and council. I was also previously executive sponsor for the first LGBTQ ERG, formal ERG. We had an informal group before that called the Out and Ally Group. And so I'm an ally, and I'm happy to be somebody who is visibly an ally so that I can maybe, by being a role model, other leaders will step out and be allies also in the agency. So thanks for sharing some time with me. Thanks.
Thank you, Melanie. I'd like to ask Sarah to go next.
Hi, thank you. My name is Sarah Phillips. I am an employee at Glenn Research Center. My pronouns are as varied as the rainbow. I typically go by she, her, but I also go by they, them, and I will certainly answer to whatever anyone chooses to call me. I am part of the LGBTQ community, and I identify as gender nonconforming and also lesbian.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks for joining us today. Donna, how about you go next?
I'm Donna Schaefer. I work at Johnson Space Center. I'm Associate Director there, where I chair the I&I Council, and I also have had probably one of my most fun jobs ever in serving as executive sponsor for our Out and Allied ERG here at JSC. My pronouns are she and her, and much like Sarah, I answer to many names, and I'm happy to. And so I'm thrilled to get to spend some time here with you guys today as we talk more about what's going on with the world and how we can work together to make it a better place to be for our colleagues. Thanks.
Thank you, Donna. And Ron.
Yes, my name is Ron Braid. I am happy to be rejoining my NASA family members, having retired as of last October. My pronouns are he, him, and his, and one of my last positions at NASA was as the Ames Associate Center Director. I've also served as a senior champion for a number of ERGs during my time at NASA, including the Equal Accessibility Advisory Committee, which is for the people with disabilities community, the Native American Advisory Committee, both at Goddard, and then most recently in 2019, I served as the senior champion for the Pride Alliance at NASA headquarters for the LGBTQ+ community. So I'm honored to have been asked and glad to be joining you all today.
All right, thanks so much. And thank you to this great mix of community members, allies, employees, leaders, and people from across the agency to have this discussion today with us. We really appreciate it. One of the things that we'll try to do today, because we know that sometimes language is tricky, it can change, it can be elusive. So we'll try to define some terms. And so maybe that just makes it easier to have a good dialogue. And hopefully that's informative to everybody. So let's just start with that. All of those letters that are out there, LGBTQ+, what do they mean? So it stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer. And we can spend a lot of time talking about that term, but we'll maybe save that for another day. And the plus is on the end of there. You sometimes will see variations of that, but it just acknowledges there is a tremendous diversity in terms of sexual orientation and gender identity. And so we'll maybe have a chance to talk about what some of those things mean today. So first topic I'd like to maybe just chat with our panel about. I hope that the audience noted that when we introduced ourselves, we all identified our pronouns. And so pronouns are really important when it comes to gender identity. We've got a lot of studies that show that people, young adults today, identify as transgender or non-binary or gender non-conforming. And here again, we'll just define a term for you. If you ever hear the term cisgender, that just means someone who has a gender identity that corresponds to what they were assigned at birth. And if you're transgender, it's a person who has changed their gender identity, or maybe someone is gender non-conforming, or non-binary might be a different identity, not different than male or female, so different than our understanding traditionally of what that means. So pronouns are a way of expressing that. And why is that important to do in introductions in the workplace? I'd like to maybe just get some perspectives from our panel. And Sarah, I'm wondering if you could start with that.
Sure. Thanks for kicking that off. So gender is a really interesting topic. And I think the most important thing to point out is that gender for a lot of people is a journey. It doesn't always necessarily have an ending. I think traditionally when people think of gender, they think you're either cisgender or you're transgender. You know, a lot of people don't realize that there's anything in between. For many people that are on the journey of being transgender, there's the idea that they're going to become as feminine or masculine as possible. And that's the more traditional view of how people look at transgender. Trans spectrum is absolutely huge. And it allows for people to really explore who they are inside, how they identify outside. As a non-gender confirming person, I identify as non-binary. So for me, I did not come out until I was an adult. I was already in my 30s because my entire life, I knew I wasn't a girl, but I didn't think I was a boy either. And it wasn't until someone actually started giving me some of these definitions and saying, you don't have to be, as manly as you want. Like, why don't you just explore who you want, who you are? And finding that medium and having the ability to day by day represent how I'm feeling, whether it be more masculine or more feminine or maybe a variety of both, has allowed me to feel like the most authentic self I've ever been. And the way that we see gender and recognize gender is changing. And that's absolutely a wonderful thing. I know it can be scary to a lot of people because I think as humans, we like to have easy labels. We like to be able to identify something because then we understand it. And having gender fluid and non-gender conforming is not something that you can easily understand because there's no box. And so I think it's really good that we talk about that today, especially when we talk about allyship, because, it's important for our allies to understand and respect that, gender is a journey, and that there are a lot of employees at NASA who are, I think, going to listen to this today and really, really take a lot of positive feedback and feel good about hearing that they are supported on that journey.
Thank you, Sarah. That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. From a NASA leadership perspective, let me ask either Melanie or Donna if you have a perspective on that and what NASA leadership might do in terms of the importance of pronouns and gender identity in the workplace.
So one of the things that I think is important to remember is that this is relatively, I would say, this is a relatively new concept to many people, especially many straight people. In the past, the definitions have evolved even since I was an executive sponsor of Out and Allied. And so I guess what I would tell you is I'm always a little uncomfortable for the reason, not because I'm uncomfortable with the concept or anybody. I'm uncomfortable that I don't want to unwittingly offend somebody. And so I worry about whether I've got the protocol right or whether I'm going to treat somebody the way they want to be treated, the way they should be treated, the way they expect to be treated. And so what I try and tell other leaders if asked is, hey, just treat every person as an individual. They'll give you cues about how they want to be seen and who they are and how they want to be addressed, and just pay attention and take everybody, one person at a time. But the thing that I think is scary for especially a lot of straight people is they don't want to offend somebody and they're not sure if they are or if they're not and what the kind of the rules of the road are. Because I think a lot of times people are uncomfortable, and that can be misconstrued as having a more nefarious origin, and it's really just afraid to be rude to somebody and in fear of offending somebody. So.
One thing I would add onto that, just something simple that I only recently did because it only occurred to me recently to do this, that is helpful, I think, as I added my pronouns to my signature block on my auto signature. So when my emails go out and people see that, they see what I hope is, one, me sharing a little bit of information about myself, and two, they see this as a space where if they're talking to me, I hope and that they know they can be their true authentic selves to me.
And Don, I really appreciate that. And to add on to what Melanie said, sometimes it's those small things that can really make a big difference. So normalizing that practice of adding your pronouns to your email signature line, or even just getting in the practice of in a meeting where you are introducing people for the first time of stating your pronouns, it just makes everybody more comfortable in being able to share that. And then that way you're able to acknowledge someone the way that they want to be acknowledged. So it's a small thing, but it's a really important practice. So thank you for doing that. Ron, anything to add on this topic?
I agree with what everyone has said. I think that it's critically important as a leader within an organization to try to create an environment where everyone feels that they can be themselves.
Thank you, Ron. I appreciate that. And that is actually a great segue to explore this topic of allyship a little further. That is the topic of today's event. So let's talk a little bit more about